Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on September 30th, 2024 at approximately 4:30 p.m. BST. Now, I've returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I build myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies that I use to gauge just about every movement I make. With this in mind, we're going back to the healing modalities. But instead of looking at all the differences around the world, we're going to look at the commonalities of species on Earth, in Earth, and all around Earth. Okay, many of the all around aren't anywhere near Earth, to be honest with you. But right now we have LA Moon in the house. Okay, she is, quite honestly, that's the moderator that keeps a real strong eye on whether or not I'm watching my own health, physically speaking. So you can bet your bottom dollar if she tells me that I've got to go and grab a quick bite or a quick snack, we're taking a rig. Fortunately, I'm in pretty good shape on that end today. Now, we know Storm is in the background because you can see him up there at the top of the stream. He is, well, quite frankly, if there's a problem in the chat room, I rely on Storm to go, that's a problem, child, you're going. So before anybody jumps on any idea here, no, Storm is not a bully. Storm is simply making certain I don't have another heart attack like I did a few months ago. Not a fun thing. So before we get going on things, again, people, if you've got a question, absolutely put it in the chat room in all caps. The odds are somebody else has the same question. But we have in the house, we have Ken Stockley is in here with the gold. How's it going, Ken? Long time no hear. Yeah, I mean, things have been busy around my end. I know they've been busy around yours. Okay. And it's kind of neat that you're in here today because communication is the real key factor to what's happening. Now we have Renee Andrews is in with the silver. How you doing, Renee? Hopefully things are going well. And then we have Joe Stewart is in with the bronze. Joe, I know things are active around your end. They always are. Usually it gets to be entertaining for a while. Okay. So, when we look at the commonalities of species, let's understand something. Okay. When we're dealing with the people on Earth, and I'm going to say some things that are going to just set some people off. I believe the polite way of putting it will be, I believe the polite way of putting it will be, if you don't like what I'm saying, probably shouldn't listen. The fact of the matter is, I'm not known for being subtle. Okay. But I see all these different social events and social issues going on. And the first thing that we get straight, every time somebody says this one specific issue is of import, understand, I look at it and go, it's all connected. See, you think about it. If you're dealing with somebody and you desire to be treated in a decent fashion, it is critical you treat the people you run into in a decent fashion. If you're treating somebody in a way you would not appreciate being treated, probably a good idea not to treat them that way. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to get forced to apologize. At least I thought I was being forced. More often than not, I would look at the person and go, please accept my most insincere apology to date. Okay, problem solved. I apologize. I'm not sure looking back on that was necessarily the best way to do it, but it worked for me. Now, here's the thing. No matter who you're talking to, and I mean Talk to yourself, talk to your kids, your other half, friends, your partner, whatever you want to put it into. Strangers, it's the same thing. When you're talking to somebody, understand, no matter what the disagreement, no matter what the difference of opinion, it is, in my experience, inevitably a 50-50 problem. I've never seen a difference. I've never seen where one person was actually more responsible for a conflict than another. Now, understand, this applies to humans, Arcturians, Elfid, the Calder, which, by the way, the Calder, I found out just a little while ago, is actually the name of the entire dwarven species. They are an ancient race. They live underground, by the way. Okay, like they live in what we call hollow or inner earth. Okay, we may be talking about a raccoon, a snail, an ant. Heck, you could be talking about a polyps vine or a tree. These are all individuals that like being treated and treated decently. Everybody I know likes to they like to be treated with respect. They like enough food to keep their stomach full. They like enough, they like enough food, they like enough water to make sure they're not dying of thirst. They like proper clothing according to their species. Okay. But the reality is, I've yet to see very many people that go, oh, beat me. Please beat up on me, bully me, I feel better. There are those that like that. In case you haven't noticed, in case you haven't heard it before, there's an old saying that goes, sticks and stones may break my bones, but whips and chains excite me. That's not my way of looking at the world, but some people enjoy that. Okay, so when we are talking about the similarities, all people that I've run into have the same outlook. Okay, they really do. Even what you call the most heinous people on the planet. Okay, even when you talk about sociopaths, people that just don't connect with people, they still prefer to have enough food. They still desire to be treated with respect. In a true sociopath's outlook, though, they actually don't know how to treat people decently. It just doesn't connect. This does not make them inherently evil. And yes, a sociopath and a psychopath, for that matter, can learn to behave in proper society, as in a society where people aren't automatically trying to kill each other. But it takes effort and desire on their part. They may not feel it, but they can, because you think about it, when I was growing up, I did not feel much in the way of joy. Okay, not for myself, but I could see the way other people were behaving, that it was supposed to be fun. Excluding this funny little thing of pranks. Those I never took well to. And Joe Stewart is just adding, and Joe, did I see? Yes, I did. Joe goes, talking to yourself constantly and a lot, and repeating yourself a lot and constantly does not mean you're crazy. You're simply human. Hate to tell you this, Joe, although I agree it doesn't mean you're crazy. I certainly will not relegate it to simply being human. Because with the number of different races I run into, they do the same thing. Okay, and rest assured, some of them, you call them human, they're going to take direct offense. But you are right. Talking constantly to yourself does not make you nuts. Same as talking with your hands. When I was growing up, there was a saying that indicated if you spoke with your hands a lot, you were French. Okay. Well, the reality is I speak with my hands a lot, and I'm not French. On the other hand, I have decided that learning sign language again may not be a bad idea, especially on here, because there are people on here that will watch, okay, or that cannot hear. Now, am I going to get that good? The odds are highly improbable, okay, but there's nothing wrong with learning a new language. Now, I am not, actually, I am. I was going to say I'm not a teacher. I am. I'm just not qualified to teach sign language per se. But I will tell you, if you can learn just the basics, okay, like for instance, you see a deaf person, they're walking down the street, you can smile at them, no problem. Saying hi isn't going to work. But if you do this, they'll read it as H-I, hi. Again, it's just a method of communication. Now, I can't show you Morse offhand. I've got it around here somewhere. I'm going to be learning that myself. I'm going to be reminding myself how to work. I took a course in sign language a long time ago. Now, bear in mind, sign language from species to species may alter. Probably will. But it's still a language. Okay? And when you're looking at the commonalities, people, they all have, every species I've run into has the same setup. If they're happy, they smile. Not exactly a relaxing appearance if you're looking at many of the reptilians. Or for that matter, a Sangina. Okay, sometimes smiles can be a little disconcerting. Okay, but when you take a look at when they're happy, they smile or they laugh. When somebody is unhappy, they frown or perhaps cry. Many people when they are angry will scream, they'll shout, or they'll throw or hit things. Okay, I absolutely tell you, violence is not a good way to deal with much. Thing you got to remember is that no matter what the species we're talking about, the only functional difference between them, the only functional difference between the different species is literally the intricacy and the evolution of their toys. Okay, some people, some of the species have phenomenal technology. Others work with mystical arts. Yeah, I always get a kick out of it. LA goes, it's okay to talk to yourself. It's okay to answer, and it's hilarious when you ask yourself, what? Which happens around here. I end up getting into a three-way argument with myself a lot of the time. What I like to do, what I think I do, because there's the negative side, the positive side, and that neutral side. Like I get told, this is the way I feel. I look at them and go, and I care why. Because a lot of the time it just doesn't connect. Like I was on Spaced Out Radio a while ago, and by the way, real quick note, I will be on Spaced Out Radio this coming Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific, with the ET Connection. But I was on the show a few months back. Could be a while longer than that. Somebody came on, they went, why should we believe what you say? And I never thought about it. I heard the question. I went, well, sir, what makes you think I care whether you believe what I say? The fact of the matter is, a lot of what comes out of my mouth, especially regarding other races, I sit here going, am I just losing my mind, or am I actually aware of all of this? It is a constant argument with myself. But it's a corroboration I get from people in this chat room and other broadcasts that I've listened to or that I've talked on, where they confirm or corroborate what I've already said. which at least does give me, a little bit of a bonus in going, okay, I'm not losing my mind. It's really like I really have the information. What to do with it is always a lot of fun. But understand, any method you use, now everybody has their own thinking processes. Yeah, LA goes, if you're going to talk to yourself, it's important to listen to. I was sitting there one day, I was talking to my other half, and she was getting real serious. So I just sat there for a moment and went, completely ruined the disconnect she was having. It is a form of communication, and there's all kinds of sign language that we could show you. We're not going to go into that Canadian short form. Okay, but what we have to realize is when you're striving to say something, okay, now you gotta remember everybody have different social standings. Now with humans, if you tell them to put your hands up, they'll put their hands up. Human to human, they know it means that you are now surrendering. Other races, that's not a good sign. Those are Fuentiran. I'd have to look. I forget exactly which race it is offhand. Okay. That when they bring, I think it might be the Fuentiran. That when they bring their hands up, okay, they've actually got a blade down on their forearm that extends. Okay. It's actually a spike. But what this tells you is when they're putting their hands up this way, they are not getting ready to surrender. Okay, they're actually getting ready to fight. Same as when humans, not the Fuente, that annoys me when I do that. Oh well. Every physical sign does not mean the same thing to every race. Okay. I mean, the reality of it is, when you're striving to communicate, all people, if they've got an optic setup, okay, if your eyes are set in the front, humans call it binocular vision. Okay, lots of people, they see with their physical eyes. But here's the kicker. The fact they see it does not mean they interpret it the same way. The reality is this. Human culture is pretty cut and dry. If I hold a cup out to you, odds are you're going to see it as me offering you a drink. Okay? Some races, it doesn't work that way. Okay? But every one of the species I've run into laugh when they're happy. Laugh or at least smile. They cry when they're hurt. Okay? When they get mad, they lash out. These are all normal things. Oh, there we go. Joe goes, my parents hear me do it so much. God bless them. I just tell them, oh, it's my imaginary friend. Speaking of that, if you get the opportunity there, Joe, and all of you, I watched a show the other day called If. Okay, literally spelled IF. It's put out by, who the heck is it put out by? It's put out by a contingent of Disney. This much I know. Oh, Pixar Studios. If you get the opportunity to watch the movie If, it's animated. Yes, I'm 61. I enjoyed it. There are not many movies I do. Unless you're thinking about missing in action, that sort of thing. But if you get the opportunity to watch it, do so. Well worth the hour or so to watch. Now, all races, every species I know of, okay, they do aim for their children to be, to be a better person, to be better than they were. Most of them do. Now, the funny part about it is some races, humans go, oh, I've got a child. Most will go, I'm going to raise it as best I can. Right? Some humans unfortunately go, I'm not keeping them, put up for adoption. Hats off to adopting parents, because that's a challenge and a half. Parenting is a challenge. But there are races that go, hey, look, I just gave birth to 100 kids. That means I got 20 meals. Right? And that's literally the way they look at it. Reproduction is a method of food supply. Sounds absolutely appalling to humans, but it is an issue of having a child for a purpose. Now, most of the sentient races I've run into are very family oriented. They will protect their kids. Okay. By the way, this applies to most of the animals on Earth. Okay. The kid is either born already capable or doesn't live. So they are born in vast numbers. Now the Econ, okay, which is an interesting race, they are born pregnant. But you got to remember, the fact of the matter is, with the Econ, they are a major food source on their planet. Every species does the same thing, in as much as if their world is a harsh enough one, they will develop shelter or develop communication or develop shelter or technology to protect them from the elements. All people that I've run into like to be comfortable. Now understand there are some that will go, well, living in a harsh environment makes you makes a real adult out of you. Okay. I mean, heck, last I heard, and I don't know if it's still the case, right? 30 years ago, there was a tribe in Borneo on Earth here that their idea of a test of manhood was they take a 13-year-old kid, give him a knife, tell him to jump into the water and kill himself a shark with a knife. Okay. Now, you take most Canadians or most Americans and hand them a knife and say, jump in the water and kill a shark. They're going to go, you first. There is no issue of, oh, I want to do it. Right. But they all work to teach the kids how to survive. Different motivations sometimes. Let's raise the young people so they can go to war and we can enjoy the luxuries. Not a good idea in my eyes, but hey, what the heck. One of the things I do find is that every species, if they aren't able to travel fast enough, they will find a way to develop, and they will find a way to actually make themselves move faster, whether it is by technology, by magic, or by physical training. That's up to the individual. Now, bear in mind, almost every human, can learn, for instance, to run faster, to run more effectively, or to ride a bike, drive a motor vehicle, any number of options. But we are trainable. Same thing that happens, or maybe I should say teachable. The same thing happens in every other species I run into. They still have to learn. And for those of you that have this brilliant idea that, look, there's so many poor drivers out there, we should raise the driving limit. We should learn and raise the age of driving. Problem: if you're 14 and you're learning to drive, for the first 3 years, you're going to have trouble. Okay, so by the time you get to 17, you're making less mistakes, theoretically, or you're dead. Okay, now let's move the age of driving up to the age of 25 instead of 18 or 19. Okay, and all of a sudden, now you're still looking at 3 years of training. Same thing applies when different species are taught how to handle high-tech equipment. How to handle, for instance, off of Star Wars, a speeder bike. They still have to learn. Okay? Any military I've seen, people are still told, I outrank you, you do this. I wish in a lot of cases the people being promoted into positions of power would learn a little bit more about think first and shoot second. Unfortunately, now the neat part is, we talk about mankind being violent. Mankind doesn't even know the beginning of war. Okay, understand, mankind goes, we'll take a gun and shoot that person. There are races that go, oh, that person upset me, so we're going to cure it with violence. We're going to blow up the planet. Okay, yes, there's a lot more collateral damage. The point being, again, when you're looking at war, everybody looks at the same thing. The winner, number one, the winner writes the history. Okay, but every species I've ever run into that went to war did the same thing. They follow the orders of the leaders. Somewhere along the line, leaders get a little screwy, and the people following them all of a sudden start to change direction. Same thing happens in the political field, in the family unit. These are all things that happen to every species. Okay. Even if you look at the way wolves behave. Okay. If a wolf pup steps out of line, the wolf, the mother, will beat the stuffing out of it to get it back in line. Now, this does not mean humans should beat the stuffing out of their kids. Quite the contrary. There are these funny things called laws that we're supposed to follow. Not the least of which is the issue of karmic law. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Meaning, if you're looking at a situation and you don't like the way something's going down, make certain when you consider meting out punishment that you're doing it in a way that adds up. Okay, beating a kid, beating anybody to the point of unconsciousness because they spilled a glass of milk is overreactive, in my opinion. But this is why I say all people, every race, they do the same thing. If they don't have a vehicle, they all walk one way or another. Okay? Even the ones that are naturally born with the ability to fly, they still walk a lot of the places. Unless you like the one seagull I saw in town here. Okay, we had a pedestrian crosswalk. And this seagull, I kid you not, this seagull landed in amongst the people. There were 5 or 6 people getting ready to walk across the crosswalk. It was a pedestrian crosswalk. And these 5 or 6 people are standing there. And I kid you not, this seagull lands at their feet. And when they go to walk across, the seagull walks across the entire width of the crosswalk. When he gets to the sidewalk on the other side, he takes off and flies again. Now, I don't know, I'm thinking that's taking pedestrian crosswalk a little much. But the same thing holds true. when we're looking at communication, you, as a speaker, have to make sure you're being clear about what you're intending or what you're asking. Okay, I see it happening here a lot, where somebody will ask a part question and it won't add up. That's got to be wrong. I am going to refresh this. I'm just refreshing my feed so I can see what I'm looking at here. Oh, there we go. Now, when we look at the commonalities, okay, communication is critical. If you're going to ask a question, make absolutely certain that you phrase it in a clear fashion. Because if the other person doesn't understand what you're asking, you're not going to get the response you're looking for. Man, I would love to know why my throat is seizing. But I'll work with it and see what we can do. But people, like I use the term people for everybody. Human, dog, cat, plant, off-worlder, ancient race, doesn't matter. You're all people. Okay? And what I found is that people on the whole behave in very similar fashions. This is why karmic law does apply for everybody. Oddly enough, karmic law applies for what you call God himself. But then when I had that conversation, with him, he told me flat out he didn't set it up. He didn't set the stage for karmic law. He simply, I appreciate that, Cowie. How you doing? Glad you could join us. Honestly, I appreciate it when people say, hey, you know what you're doing. I tell you, I look in the mirror a lot of times going, did you even think before you said that? And a lot of the time it's no. So I have managed to get things organized to a degree. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To be clear, guys, I am now at a point I've figured out with positive perceptions. I will be keeping an eye on things, getting them listed upwards of 5 days in advance. Okay, and letting people know this is what we're doing so people can get a heads up on it. But the same thing that we're looking at, okay, whenever you're dealing with anybody, understand, if you're not communicating clearly, every species I know has a limit where they will get confused, they will get frustrated. Great, County, look forward to seeing you there. I have no idea what we're dealing with. Of course, we never do on Dave's show. But we are looking at a situation here where when we're dealing with different species, every one of them has essentially the same outlook. They desire to get better, to be secure in their own area. Most of them have this brilliant idea: we have to expand. The majority of them are looking at expanding territory simply because the population is growing. Okay, but how you go about expanding your territory is the critical issue. Now, if we take a look at positive perceptions, we have currently 637 subscribers. Okay, now there are 8 billion people out there. So we got a lot of room to grow. And this message I bring again this lifetime, that we can make this a better world for virtually everybody, does require the assistance of a lot of you. And we can see we're starting to grow. This is a great thing. Okay. I am looking forward. Not, in all fairness, I really have no interest in sitting up on a pedestal. But as it was pointed out to me, okay, you cannot stop people from putting you on a pedestal. But the trick is never see yourself as being there. You know, I've learned a lot, but understand, I've learned a lot because I remember what I did. Fortunately, in my younger years when I was drinking, I never drank to the point I didn't remember. You know, one of the biggest things we have to remember when dealing with people, okay, is if you treat them kindly, on the whole, they will treat you kindly. There are always going to be dingbats. Okay. I remember asking her, I remember hearing a guy go, he dealt with the cashier. The cashier says, "Have a good day." I kid you not, the guy spun on her and goes, "Don't tell me what kind of day to have." And I'm thinking, boy, does that take a lot of work to be that grumpy. On that note, I'm going to pass on a neat little piece of news. Okay, I think I did yesterday, but I've got a good memory, so. But if you're ever having a bad day, especially if you have a bad day because you broke up, okay, just think your ex, your now ex, is out there looking for somebody, and he or she has likely found somebody that figures they found the partner of their dreams. Okay, now remember, this is your ex. You broke up for a reason. Think about that for half a moment. One of the things you have to keep in mind, and every species I've talked to has the same hang up. Think before you speak. Okay? Frankly, you were given 2 ears. Listen to what's being said. 2 ears and 2 eyes. Both information input. You've only got 1 mouth. Okay? Keep the ratio in mind. But every species I've talked to has the same problem. Okay? Every race I know of has the same problem. Where they have a tendency, if somebody hits an emotional chord, mouth goes into gear, brain goes on hold. I'm a prime example of that. Now, when we look at society, every society I've run into, okay, every member of the galactic consortium that I've run into that have finally got a one world government did not get there without the same pattern of, okay, we're going to try all these varied governments. We're going to start with might is right. And I will tell you, might does not make it right. But it can certainly intimidate people into thinking so. The catch is, might is not always physical. Okay, there's a saying that goes, the pen is deadlier than the sword. A sword can kill one person. A pen can drive a world. It can drive a country or a society into war. If you buy into it. Okay. Now I'm a firm believer that war has never has never brought peace. Okay. It brings quiet but not peace. Now, I'm going to ask you a real loaded question here, Callie. And you can answer if you will. If you won't, that's okay. But when you think of the communication line that drove the two of you apart, how much of it do you figure is your responsibility? Now, I will tell you, absolutely, I've had a few relationships. Every one of them, I took a lot of blame for to start with, but I managed to reach the same conclusion. Okay, and it's just a curiosity. But, and anybody is open to answer this, absolutely. When you think of relationships that have fallen apart, or even arguments that have happened, how much of that responsibility with the communication, and I mean vocal communication. I don't mean this idea of hand-to-face communication. Okay, I'm referring to vocal. How much of it do you figure is each party's responsibility? And the reason I asked you directly, Cowie, is simply because of, well, you brought up your ex, and I figure what the heck, it gave me a perfect door to open it. All species go through the same thing. They really do. Okay. Difference is some, like for instance, the praying mantis, they get into a fight, and the woman will literally eat the husband's head. Now, I'm not sure, but I think this is a little overkill. But I am curious where it comes to the communication side, because, and I see it all the time, not all the time, but close enough, where the males are taught they are the leading, the dominant form. Callie, you're one of the few people I've taught that I've asked that actually did that right. I've never seen a relationship, a communication problem that was not 50-50. Okay, where the communication was not half one person, half the other. Okay. Now, the reality is, whether you talk to each other, sometimes silence works better than anything else. But the fact that you've taken on 50-50, same with mine. I made some mistakes. Okay. I absolutely made some mistakes. But every species I know of has the same ratios. Yeah, Cowie, as far as I recall, it does. Cowie's just asking, doesn't the black widow spider eat its bait? Absolutely. If I recall correctly, that is the case. And then you've got these other people that go, oh, humans, when they eat their mate, everybody calls them a cannibal. And I'm like, it's a reasonable thing. Personally, I'm not into eating my partner. The way I figure it, cannibalism for me doesn't work. Okay. But I can tell you, and you're going to love this one. Ellie goes, I don't know, it takes a murder rap to a missing person pretty quick. Yeah. It really does. The one thing I find is that when you're looking at the similarities, people have to eat in order to survive. Now, it does not specify what you have to eat. Like I said, some people eat their kids, some people eat their mates, some people eat the neighbors. But when I'm talking about people, I'm not talking about humans. Hopefully. Nathan. Ouch. Nathan, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Oh, there we go. Callie goes, a girl with a black widow spider on her neck told me that fact about the black widow. Now, got a question for you. I'm presuming that was a black widow, a tattoo that she had, not a pet. Although that would be neat. I trust things are going well for you tonight, Nathan. And again, guys, on Saturday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, drop into Nathan's Quantum Show and give it a listen. He's got some great topics to come up. It is one of those neat little ways to spend an evening. If you've got, it's a good thing to take the time out, right, and drop in. I was about to say it's a great way to spend the evening if you don't have anything to do. Personally, I recommend you schedule it. Okay, there's all kinds of things out there you can do. I spend a lot of my time doing all sorts of weird things and looking into different things. This afternoon, I spent it literally going through my stuff, going through files, and streamlining them. The nice part about it, every species I know of does the same thing. The ones where the species prosper, they've got one of two areas. Either the species works together. That's what I'm here to tell you. Working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Okay? Now, you can do it the calm way, or you can do it the negative way, where one individual says, do what I say, or I'm going to hurt you. Most species are motivated by avoiding pain. They really are. Which, oddly enough, also means that war caused by starvation is a real thing. One of the nice things about it is whenever we're looking at any of the races, we have some interesting things that show up. Okay, not the least of which is everybody looks, especially when you get into further and further spread out. When humans were living in small family units, okay, they all stayed together. All you had to do was use something called Wazimail. Walk and say it. Okay, in a small community, that's all you have to do. Step out the front door, call, you can get the attention. As the world spread out, and this happens on every species, every world I've seen. Okay, as civilization expands, they look for new ways to communicate further distances. Okay, now some of it I can do. I take a look at the old North American Indians, okay, the old natives, and they use smoke signals. Now, I look at the sky and I go, how pray tell can you see an A or a B or whatever? And yet they had it down fine. They had it worked out beautifully. And I mean, when we start looking at war, and I don't agree with war, just be clear, war has never brought peace. But if I recall correctly, and somebody out there is going to correct me on this, I'm sure of it. If I remember correctly, in World War II, the United States developed a method of communication. They needed required communication. Now, needless to say, in war, not talking in the language of the person that you're fighting is probably a good idea. But my understanding is that the U.S. brought in the First Nations to handle all the radio communications. They could never break, the enemy could never break the code. Of course, they didn't have an Indian talking to them. Okay. And then LA goes, most breakups are 50-50 proposition. There's plenty of blame to go around. Breakups, and the funny part is, breakups can vary. The communication, I've never seen a variation. Okay. Many times I'll watch a relationship going on, and it's like, this shouldn't actually carry on. At the end, it's a toxic relationship. Now, here's a neat little fact for you. Okay. I ran into this will give you an idea of what my level of tact is. Okay. I was talking to one person, and they asked me what I thought of them marrying this individual. I looked up at them and I literally went, I never blinked. I just looked at them and went, why would you even consider marrying that? Okay. Now, in all fairness, okay, that their wedding night resulted in the new partner throwing us and throwing a French knife at their partner. The one I warned that, why would you bother marrying that? Okay. The reality of it is, it was a toxic relationship. Oh, there we are. LA is bringing us up. The Navajo Nation developed the Code Talkers. Well, if you didn't understand Navajo language, on the whole, you're not breaking it. It's not like, it's not like you can just exchange a couple of letters. Joe's going, I was just reminiscing to myself earlier today, doing choirs around, okay. Should have been doing chores around the house about that one night out back, the truck, the possible tail-on landing. That experience to this day sticks in my head. Yeah, once you've seen that, getting away from it there, Joe, absolutely. I can understand that. Like, if you look over my right shoulder here, you see the way that setup sits. Ever since Nathan pointed out it looked like a robot, I haven't been able to see it as another thing. Okay, but it's one thing to believe in off-worlders in ancient races. It's another to actually bear witness to it. Yeah, notice that LA's just going further. She goes, there's a lot of special image involved in the language. Only another tribe member would understand it. And this is the whole catch with communication. Okay, this is why I start when I'm striving to explain something. I will use the terms I know and then come backwards and break it down so it makes sense. Okay. But rest assured, humans have just as much trouble understanding other races of humans as they do other species. Okay. Now, the neat part is when we take a look at race compared to species, all members of the same race all members of the various races are still members of the species. But all members of a given species are not necessarily members of a given race. Okay, one of the neat things I discovered was as long as you work on your communication skills and you speak with an open heart, most of the time you can make headway. But you've got to understand the culture, because sometimes just being quiet and respectful is taken as a sign of being an idiot, or worse, very disrespectful. Let's face it, you talk quietly, and what ends up happening in some species, they will take that as though you do not have confidence. Okay. Now, there, like a friend of mine told me years ago, he goes, he was told by his dad, all men are not created equal, but there are equalizers. Okay, in my eyes, you're all created equal. There is no equalizers, there's just communication gaps. But the more you realize that people on the whole are striving to do the same thing, get their point across. Okay? Quite often, if people don't understand a given language, okay, we end up with a neat little problem. If you don't understand a given language, what you end up with is somebody that the misunderstanding happens and now it gets blown out of proportion. Okay, it's kind of like, if you put your hands this far apart, odds are you're not going to get a lot of reaction. Most people, if they want a hug, put their arms out a little wider, or they come right out and ask. Okay, I will tell you, I ran into one species. You don't want to get a hug from them. Okay, because they will hug you, but that's how they feed. Okay, their mouth isn't up here. Well, their vocal cords come out up top, but their abdomen is where their mouth is. So if they're offering you a hug, I would strongly recommend against it. Okay, it's kind of like the one race I know of, and I've actually got it in book 2. But you go to shake a human's hand, and that's great. That's just a simple idea of communicating, of greeting. These guys, they'll put their hand out. If you take their hand, their stomach will unfold over their hand and completely envelop yours, where they will immediately start to digest it. Okay, their putting out their hand is worse than a human beggar going, can you spare some change? These guys will eat you while you're alive. Okay, and this is why it is imperative you understand the culture and the community when you're going to a new area. This applies to if you're going to visit a different country on earth. Get an idea of the culture. Get an idea of the language so you can at least ask the basics. Let's face it, I'm lost if you don't know anything else in a given language. Okay, the 2 things I strongly recommend, personal experience involved. Learn when you're going to a new community, a new country. Learn at least 2 phrases. Okay, in their native language. Well, there's that too. I mean, fortunately, we're a little more civilized. But yeah, this is also why putting your hands up indicated in the past, I'm not holding any weapons. Okay, but 2 phrases I would really strongly recommend in the native language of the country you're going to. Okay, and my pronunciation is wrong. Don't worry about that. But I did learn how in French to go, je ne sais pas parler français, which literally means in French, I don't know how to speak French. In Spanish, I learned yo no hablo español. In Spanish, it means I do not know Spanish. Okay, or more to the point, I do not speak Spanish. Okay, very important. It will save you a lot of hassles. Better off to learn at least conversational language. And for those of you that are getting older, here's a neat little kicker for you. Okay, learning a new language helps keep the brain working, thereby cutting down on mental degradation. Okay, every species I talk to, I tell the same thing. Now, I will tell you, you're going to have a heck of a time with some of the languages. Okay, simply because the pronunciation is a little odd. For them, it's not odd, by the way. when you're looking at the technology people have, like I said, species across the board are constantly looking for a way to make their life more comfortable. They're looking to make sure that they have enough food in the house. They've got enough food to eat. And the neat part about it is, once you understand that the basic driving forces of people are very similar to each other, this is when you start looking at the commonalities and going, okay, these are things that we have in common. Let's build on those instead of going, I don't understand you, and then pushing people away and getting mad or getting frustrated. I had a chap here that moved, a neighbor that moved here from Brazil. And when he was first talking to me, he goes, I don't know. He tried saying something and he stops. He goes, I don't speak English well. I looked at him, I went, you know what I mean? I says, you don't speak English well. I says, you should try my Portuguese. Right. I couldn't say that in Portuguese, by the way. But all species have the same thing. They still have to figure out how to communicate. This is why the reticulans came in and started figuring out how to grow cultural interpreters, aka the hybridization program. Which reminds me, not the hybridization program, but got to take a look at something here. It's just a question that came to my attention that somebody's going to end up asking. Not about tonight's show, but about one that's coming up. Now, one of the neat little parts about this is as you start to understand. Now, I said all species, but let's be real. We'll pull this back into perspective just on Earth for a moment. Okay? When you're looking at species, this is right. They all have the same issue. But so do all the races. Many species have more than one race involved. And we have to realize on Earth, no matter where you are on Earth, who you sleep with, how much money you've got, what color you are, it doesn't matter. Who you vote for, none of it matters. You're all dealing with the same issues. You're still dealing with desiring food in your belly, desiring enough to drink. Okay, in my opinion, best to limit the alcohol, but then all things in moderation. And no, not alcohol. Okay, but I understand why people pick one part of society and go, this matters for this part. In my world, when you talk about life, period, matters. Okay, all life, but in my eyes, it's not just human life or one color of skin. It's all life. Okay, I'm in the middle. I've shown you this before, but I'm in the middle of reading volume 6 of an encyclopedia. And what it has brought to mind is so many times humans will wipe out insects or wipe out predators because they're causing a problem for the humans without thinking about the ramifications of what they're doing for the neighborhood. So we have to realize every life, whether we are talking animal, tree, people, whatever color, all life matters. Okay. And when we're looking at the different races, okay, understand there are subtle differences, certainly. Like, let's face it, in the tropics, nobody worries about being cold. Okay, unless you've got a real metabolic problem. But in the tropics, people don't worry about freezing to death. In the Arctic, people do not worry about whether or not they are going to die of heat frustration. But in both cases, they worry about the temperature. Okay, in the middle of a rainforest, few people worry about having a lack of rain. In the middle of a desert, few people worry about having a lack of heat. Okay, so this is one of those things where we have to look at it and go, the similarities are there. But like I said, okay, when you start looking at a one world government, we are not talking a dictator. We are talking about a setup whereby there is representation, not based on population, but based on terrain. Okay, the fact of the matter is, lots of people do not make, just because there's a lot of people in an area, does not make it a more important area. Quite seriously, half the time that there are food problems, it's because there wasn't enough food because the area couldn't support enough. Only humans, and they're not the only ones, have a tendency of going, I'm living here, I built this place, so I should stay. Right? And they get too caught up in the material world. Now, it's great. I remember one species I was dealing with. I don't have to deal with them anymore. Something about they were only a small community anyway, but they determined that they were going to stay in the area. And we warned them it was a bad place. But they went, no, our ancestors lived here, we're staying. Okay. It was great. It was a desert type area. And then they had a flash flood. So they stayed there with their homes. And with their homes, their bodies got washed away. This is where materialism takes on a whole different venue. This is why I tell you, the Egyptians thought the material stuff was absolutely imperative. Many Westerners and Easterners think the same thing. I gotta have all this stuff. Here's the newest toy. I've got to have that. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, this cup works just as well made out of plaster. Okay. That cup works just as well made out of pottery as Bohemian China. Okay. They both work to hold a liquid. Now, do not get me wrong. Like I said, I am very intent. Oh, there we go. I am very intent myself. Okay, I gotta ask. Storm, I'm seeing here chat is collapsing consistently. I'm going to see. Nope. Okay. I was about to ask if we actually have communication. Apparently we do. But guys, sorry about the chat room. What I'm looking at here it says chat is having trouble. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I know it's working on my end, so theory is the answer is yes.
We hear you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Chat's having hiccups, I see. But species across the board run into the same complications. Every species I know of, if they get hurt really badly, most of them bleed one color or another. There are some that don't. Okay. I do recall one species. It's a weird species, I'll tell you. And I gotta remember what. I know I've got the notes on them. But there's one species, I kid you not, when they get a cut, they literally get smaller. Okay, but that's because their entire physiology is built on air in a containment. Okay, but the moment that containment is breached, they start to get smaller because their actual what would amount to their blood wears out. You know, well, oh, that's what that is. What do we got? One of the neat little things I run into is this. So many people look at various different species and go, because I don't understand them, I'm not going to pay a lot of attention. But get this. Like I said, I was reading that encyclopedia. And it turns out men was having trouble with they were, and we're talking years, we're talking centuries back at this point, but mankind was having trouble with all kinds of foxes and what have you, and little predators running around. And of course, man was trying to raise chickens, so they went and started killing off all the small predators without thinking of the balance. Okay, and that balance that they didn't think about, right, is that when you take a look at it, okay, you take out all the small predators, and the things that are eating the mice, the voles, and the little reptiles and what have you, which subsequently are also, you know, you take out the predator, the smaller animals that are causing problem directly to crops are left to run. Okay, you take out the small animals, the insects are left. But mankind seems to have this brilliant idea that if it isn't that critical to them, okay, if that species isn't known to be critical, they will turn around and remove it. Many, many, many species do the same thing. That brings this one to mind. There is a race I've recently had to be dealing with. Because here's the thing. They are non biological. But when they started to arrive inside proximity space, they started looking around and going, we do not like biologicals. We are going to eliminate them all. One little catch there. The xenon rely on natural evolution of other species to come up with new ideas. Okay, in many cases, that is literally what they rely on. I swear that's what the humans are doing when it comes to movies nowadays. Look at past movies that have already been done and write a new one based on exactly the same thing. Okay, but the conversation I had to get into was literally, I had to look at it and go, guys, I know you don't like biologicals, but if you wipe out all of the biologicals, where's your inspiration for societal evolution going to come from? Net result, there's a massive debate going on right now. Yep, open my mouth, put my foot in it. And bizarre as it sounds, this is one of the things that many of the other races are concerned with humans about. Okay, humans will take a totally logical situation, come at it from an absolutely bizarre angle, and still land on their feet. Okay, some of you have the same disease I've got, also known as foot and mouth disease. I never question, am I going to put my foot in my mouth? I question, how am I going to get the second one in there with it? And let us see, I'm going to refresh this. Figure if I refresh my feed, maybe something will kick. Now, not just eliminate a lot. One of the things that we have to realize here is every species out there, human or non, goes through the same kind of concerns. How do we communicate? How do we get our point across to make sure that our belief or our culture is still there? Okay, now understand, culture evolves. It used to be normal, okay, and for humans, it used to be normal to walk around with a sword on your hip. Okay, that was the culture. We did get past it. Now everybody's got a cell phone. You know, I remember reading something I saw a little short on Facebook, right? And this guy comes into his daughter's room. And the guy being a little younger than me. His daughter's 14, 15 years old. He walks into the room and going, calls her by name and says, I need a phone book. And the guy, the daughter looks at him, and of course, being a teenager, she turns around, looks at him, and goes, Dad, you are such a dinosaur. She goes, just look it up on my cell phone. So he goes, I took the cell phone, and he says, well, now the spider's dead, the cell phone is broken, and my daughter's absolutely ticked. Okay, it's a communication problem. And it's something that every species goes through. We take a look at some of the other races there, and you take a look at, for instance, the Calder race, what you would know as dwarves. Okay, they look at it and go, if you're old enough to breathe, you're old enough to drink. Okay, most of their food is fermented. That is their culture. Okay, humans, they do that. Their kidneys fail, their liver fails completely. Again, know your culture. Kind of like you never drink and never try and drink an alcoholic under the table. The odds are not good in your favor. And having been one for long enough, I can tell you from practical experience, the more you drink, the higher your tolerance tends to go. This is not an invite. Okay, it doesn't work as well as you might think. But every species has their hang-ups. Yes, every species out there that I know of has some sort of drug addiction, some sort of substance abuse. That's the word I'm looking for. They've all got it. All of them have some form of deity that they worship. Sometimes a single entity, sometimes a pantheon. In other words, multiple gods based on various things. But virtually every species believes in a higher power. Even what you would consider God believes in a higher power than they are. Now, I know this from practical experience because I had a conversation to that effect. And yeah, you can decide whether that's real or not. One thing we have to remember is people on the whole care about what their body is going, what they look like in public, not so much in private, although it does bleed over. And what you got to remember is as long as the person's health is not being compromised by what they're wearing. Okay, my personal opinion, if their health and or societal laws are not being violated, as long as they're aware of the way other people are going to behave, then what somebody wears becomes a who cares, in my eyes. Prime example, years ago, I remember driving by a school in the middle of the winter. 7 kids walking along, all of them in short sleeves and short pants. All of them, because we got hit with an early snow, all of them were literally freezing. You could tell that they were walking along, holding their arms like this, and still walking around outside. Okay, all of them were freezing to death. You could tell, except one girl. One girl, I'm guessing by the way she looked, by her appearance, probably grade 12, walking around in a halter and a micro mini. Okay, was absolutely at home. Okay, so somebody like that, her body will handle it. Okay, your kid or you yourself, if you get cold, do not let yourself suffer just because most people aren't dealing with it. You've got to take care of you first. Yeah, I wonder. No. Okay. The big thing we have to look at here, like I said, every species, like I'm wearing glasses. Honestly, I get off the stream where I don't have to read the computer and I'm not driving. I barely wear them anymore. So I've got to get in the habit of actually remembering to leave them at my computer. I don't require them the rest of the place. Every species I know of, except one, okay, literally finds a way to make optical enhancement or auditory enhancement. There's one race I know of that I can think of off the top of my head, which is the Circassians. A child born blind. Okay, and this sounds really, really rude. Okay, a child born blind or like completely blind or completely deaf, more often than not, will, and now I shouldn't put it that way. If they're born blind or born deaf, they will teach them how to operate in those fields. However, an adult that, for instance, loses an arm, they will terminate them. They won't build a prosthetic. Okay. And the reason they do that is because their culture says 2 factors. One, that person can no longer take care of themselves properly. 2, their dinner. Okay. So you don't wait. It's a case of, okay, you can no longer survive. So people that die of old age are put on the menu. People that die of illness are tossed into the fusion reactor. In either event, their body gets used for for the betterment of society. What do we got here? Joe's just asking, he goes, I know you've seen a lot of alien ships, but how many have you been inside? I really can't even begin to give you that number. Okay. And now I'm assuming you're referring to how many different ones. Okay. But, I've been in a number of various different ones. This is why, you don't see it much here. It's part of why I suspect that I talk this way. You've seen the shows. You've seen science fiction shows where, and the Avengers, Tony Stark, he's got that neat little holographic interface. That is a biomagnetic holographic interface. Okay, there are ships that I've been on. That is their entire command ship. They literally will stand there and they'll move stuff out, they'll blow it up. They literally are putting their hands inside a hologram, inside an interactive one, and working with it. Okay, one ship I'll tell you I will never be inside. I've had a walkthrough, a virtual walkthrough, but I will never, and no human will ever be inside a Corlock ship. If you remember, if you watched, think back, yes, I refer to old movies. Space Odyssey 2001. That rectangular ship. That is a Corlock ship. The problem is, it is built in tiny little layers. You got to remember, Corlock are complete metamorphs, which means you go in that ship, it's their bioenergy, their bioelectric energy that powers their ship. Humans are not good at going into a space that's only an inch in height. They're not good at it. Okay, yeah, if you push hard enough, they can go. But many species, and humans were bad at it. Humans used to take a look at a child that was handicapped and go, they can't do anything, so we're going to terminate them. I watched a video the other day of an armless archer. Okay, now if I lose one hand, I have trouble. I've worked with one hand broken so bad that I couldn't work with it. But this woman with no arms was an absolute bullseye shot with an arrow. Okay, with an actual normal bow and arrow that anybody would use. Well, anybody knows how to use them. And again, guys, easy thing about bow and arrow and guns. Okay, with the bow and arrow, pointy end faces away from you. That's how you know if the arrow's on right. With a gun, barrel does not point towards you. This is a bad outcome waiting to happen. Okay, but I will tell you, I've seen weapons that are built backwards. And again, it boils down to same problem. If you don't know how to use a tool, it's going to get you killed. In many cases, I knew of I used to know a waitress. She worked in a bar, she worked in a licensed restaurant, and it was phenomenal. In that restaurant, you had to pour your drinks. So this woman, fantastic waitress, mind like a steel trap, but every single time she went to make a mixed drink, as in a blended drink, without exception, in the 2 years I was going to that restaurant, okay, in those 2 years, never once using a blender did she ever remember to put the lid on the blender. Never once. And then she quit her job to go on to a new career. Now, you would not believe what is the most unlikely career that somebody making that mistake would go into. Okay, never once did she remember to put the lid on the blender. but she went into a career, and it was a high-tech career. I'll give you that. That was absolutely bizarre. I'd love to know how she made out in it. Anybody got any idea what career she could have got into that would be absolutely a disaster if you don't put the lid on the blender? Yeah, I gave you half a moment because that seemed to be the thing to do. She went in, okay, she goes she went into, would you believe this, forensic science. Okay. Well, cooking could be a definite problem, no question there, LA. But she went into forensic science. And I'm looking at this going, like I commented on it. And I go, I wish you all the best of luck with it. But I can see problems. I'm hoping she did really well. Okay. I've watched people that are supposedly handicapped do phenomenal things. Okay. Like you remember, and this is why I say, when all societies have the same issues. You have people that are born with some abilities, other people that are born with different ones. Okay. But every one of you has a strength somewhere. Some societies will encourage you to find that strength and to capitalize on it. Some of them will absolutely discourage you or lock you up. I go back into the 1600s talking the way I am right now. They would lock me up or sure as shoot. Right. Because to them, I would sound completely off my nut. The neat part about it is we all have the same thing. This is why I haven't gone, that this group is better than that one. I mean, you think about it. Humans have 4 fingers and a thumb. Some of us are born a little different. Okay. We've still got the 4 fingers. But many races only have 3. I know of one race in particular that has every one of them has 4 fingers and 2 thumbs. You can bet their technology is going to be a pain for somebody with only 4 fingers and a thumb to operate. Okay, but they base their counting on the fingers they've got. Okay, usually, not always. Okay, but mathematics in every species is based on a similar discovery. We will assign this number to these things, and then everybody works with it. They all develop language based on where they are and their experiences. Now, let me ask you this. That's a pen. If I'm in Canada, I believe it's called a stylo if you're in France. But it's the same thing, just a different word. Okay? And what we have to realize is whatever word is being used, find a balance point. Okay? I end up mixing a lot of different languages together, it turns out. Okay? But every species has a language. Okay? Now, I will warn you, species on the whole will have some form of commonality. Races develop their own languages based on where they are. Now, how some of these languages evolve, I'm going to leave that to true researchers. I'm just going to tell you that something funny said in Spanish, or something funny said in Spanish, in English, or in Elfin, is still going to be funnier than heck if you understand the language. Okay? Comedy makes people that understand it laugh. Okay? If they find it funny. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people find pranking funny. I don't. Okay, so again, no matter what species, and I mean literally species, I've listened to seagulls laugh. Heck, I've listened to cows laugh. Weird noise. Okay, but cows laugh, horses laugh, reptiles laugh. You should see the philosophies laugh. Because when they laugh, they've got a colored collar. Okay. And when they laugh, it just goes absolutely nuts. Like somebody overloaded a circuit board. Okay. But when they find something funny, when any species finds something funny, they laugh. When upset, they cry, they scream, they throw things, any number of things. But all species are alike. Okay. Now, some are a lot more reticent to show their emotions. I.e., you take a look at a mantis. They get really happy, they kill their partner. I'm thinking this is bad, personally. Okay. But when any species is hungry, they look for food. If they can't find food, they will steal. Okay. And this applies to any of them. The one thing I found was that when you're looking at different income brackets, it's not a question of they're different. It's a question of they have a different take on what is too little. This is just the reality behind it. But every one of the people I know of has the same problems. They're either, they are looking to be treated with respect. They are looking to be acknowledged as an individual, regardless of their gender. I was watching on Facebook. I wonder if it's still up there on me. Take that all the way back to the top. Nope, it's moved down. But I saw a Facebook I saw a post on Facebook that literally turned around. It literally turned into this one woman. I forget what her name was, but she was a master chess player. Okay, a grandmaster. And she turned down going to a chess tournament because in her eyes, she was walking into a community where they were forcing her to behave like a second-class citizen. And as she put it, she was not going to step down on her principles and say, I'm not equal to you because I'm female. She wouldn't do it. Now, in my eyes, as I posted on that particular thing, like I said, nobody should have to give up their principles in order to be treated like a second-rate citizen or a second-class citizen. Okay, she, in my eyes, did the right thing. Okay, where she went, yes, I'm going to lose 2 titles because I will not go to this event. Money cannot be permitted to remain a going concern. Okay, it's one of these things that we've got to look at the material world. And I tell this to so many people, okay, on so many species, that it is not wise to base your happiness on your belongings. Ancient Egyptians had this brilliant idea they could take it all with them. Anybody know of an ancient Egyptian that lived through a burial? Okay, because where they died and they took all their stuff with them. How many, when you look at the pyramids, have you ever heard of a pyramid that not only was the coffin and was the dead body gone, But so was all the stuff. Okay, the material world, every species goes through its same evolution on that one, where material stuff holds a great deal of value. Okay, I'm telling you, this is what causes a lot of the conflicts. Okay, and when you realize, and it's the same I have to tell so many species, really got tricky talking to the culture. Okay, because they've got this idea that gems are really important. On their, on the other side of that, the culture will take granite and polish it up so it looks really shiny. Okay, they like the shiny things. They also like their beer. But, yes, that's a bit stereotypical. There are some some cultures that will literally not drink alcohol, primarily because of the fact it'll kill them. They are considered handicapped, by the way. Now, one of the things we have to remember, society right now is at a beautiful point. Let's get back to that. Whoa, how you doing? Glad you could join us. No doubt, Woo's just going back to a very old song. If all the raindrops were lemon drops and gumdrops, oh, what a rain it would be. I forget what the song was, but I remember that reference. And honestly, it would be. But then, if all the raindrops were cats and dogs, we'd have an absolute mess on the ground. By the way, if you've ever been hit with a guy with a lemon drop, okay, lemon drops originally were, like the lemon drops I grew up with, were not gummies. They were hard candies. Now, I remember decades back, before the Empire State Building in the United States had its upper floor railed off, walled off, somebody report had it, took a roll of pennies, broke it, and dropped it off the top of the Empire State Building. That resulted in them sealing the upper deck so nobody can go out on the balcony. Okay, primarily because, let's face it, you take lemon drops, hard candy, you drop it from orbit, and all of a sudden we've got a mess. Or from 30,000 feet. I'll tell you, it's going to hit like shrapnel. Every species I've run into goes through certain patterns. They start off in small clusters, get together, and laws have to be developed. Okay, as society expands, they have to develop methods of communication, methods of transportation to accommodate it. Okay, and they go through that issue where every one of them has gone through the issue of going, I've got more powerful magic, I've got more cattle than you, I've got a better ability to cook than you do, therefore I'm better. I'm the first one to tell you, I'm not better than any one of you. Okay, I'm really not. And not a one of you is better than the next person, spiritually speaking. Absolutely. Some of you are more talented in certain skills. Okay, for instance, I run into a thing with a computer. I'm not sitting there arguing for hours. I'm not fighting with it. Rachel, glad you can make it. How's it going? Did you get caught in the kitchen again? I know I gotta get to it today. Today I've got stuff I've got to get cooked tonight. But I am glad you made it, Rachel. The neat part about this whole thing is every species I've run into goes through the same growth curve. They've got their own entertainment, their own version of video games. It doesn't always mean, entertainment does not always mean that they have, that they've got video games. Okay, you take a look at sports. Now, I know of some races, I kid you not, okay, they play their own version of football. If there isn't at least one dead body on the field by the end of the game, it was a terrible game. Okay, this is just the way they are. Now, personally, I look at football and go, or any sport, the team that gets the most points wins. You don't count it by body count. Okay, it's kind of like when you take a look at any of the sport racing. Okay, now I know some races where they go, oh, we've got sports, we'll gamble. Okay, now you guys have heard of obviously racing of all sorts, but how about this one? This is why I call it extreme sport. Okay, the challenge is going to be to take your vehicle, however you built it, and get it to jump 100-foot, a 100-foot ravine. Okay, you'd be amazed how many people actually die in that sport. Okay, but it's a sport, and the reality is nobody takes offense to it. Every species has sports of some form, has some kind of health authority to guide them on how to stay healthy, has a spiritual path or spiritual leaders. And quite often, just like on earth, these leaders take people down an absolutely bizarre road. Okay, they take them, they go, this is what you should do. They don't follow it. They really don't. But every society I know of has had what would amount to the Dark Ages. They have had former civilizations that grew way beyond current ones and then declined because of one reason or another. Humans are not alone in this respect. Okay, and it's time we start looking at people and seeing the similarities, not the differences. Because when we start focusing on the similarities and the strengths people have instead of the weaknesses. I mean, you take a look at my other half, for instance. Blind as a bat, but she can spot a difference in somebody's vocal and somebody's tone like that. Okay. This is just a different sound enhancement on different sense. Just because somebody is, take a look at my son. His left arm doesn't work right. Yet, he plays on a standard controller PS5. Okay, he plays games online and keeps up with them. Now, I taught him how to play with a PS5 with a standard controller. Okay, I can't. I knew the pattern to do it, and I showed him what it was. He plays all the time with it. Okay, take a look at Mozart. I believe it was Mozart. It's either Mozart or Beethoven. One of them was deaf as a stone. Okay, and still produced incredible music. When we take a look at that, the fact that somebody does not have an ability, okay, or does not have full use of part of them, does not mean they're a lesser individual. Okay, same as I'm a firm believer in every society's gone through the same thing. Oh, we are the dominant gender. Because we're dominant, these people can't do that. I'm telling you, I've made some mistakes. Okay, I remember underestimating women a couple of times. One, somebody that I used to know really well. Okay, female, 57 seconds, and she took out her opponent in an MMA match. Okay, now I can't take out an opponent in an hour and a half. Okay. Never underestimate somebody based on species, gender, upbringing. Push somebody far enough, and I will tell you they will figure it out. Thank you very much, LA. LA is just letting us know that we are down to the 10-minute mark. Every species runs into its same problems. You know, where the people that are born handicapped are ultimately discarded as youngsters, many times because it took too much to keep them alive. Advanced civilizations doesn't happen so much. Okay, but I love most of the reptilian races. They've got a brilliant idea. They don't go through all this long funeral. You know, I kid you not, and it's not meant as disrespect. Okay, but you know, you're sitting at dinner with a grandparent. Grandparent is, as far as health goes, is simply dealing with health illnesses, not disease, like not cancer, just things like the body's breaking down. You're sitting there beside him. He has a heart attack and drops dead. They literally will pick him up. It's like, Grandpa, it was really nice having you here. Wish you could have lived longer, but dinner served, guys. Grandpa's gone. And that's the end of the funeral. Now, to humans, that probably sounds cold. Okay. To the Strazazians, that's just plain normal. Okay. If you take a look at the Teklak, Grandpa may not be dead by the time they kill him. And the Kami have the same problem. Okay. The most common way of getting a promotion in the Kami environment, in the Kami civilization, kill your boss. It's that simple. In this world, you desire to do better than your boss, learn. And learn everything you can. Work your way towards getting a legitimate promotion or start your own business. But I will tell you, if you're going to start your own business, treat it like a business. Learn everything you can. The most successful people in any society are not the ones that know how to do everything. They're the ones that know how to find the people that know how to do everything and are the ones that know how to motivate people in a conducive environment. Now, every society and every species I've run across has gone through the same issue. Many of them that operate by the idea, that might is right, are missing something rather important. Might isn't right, but it does have to be taken into consideration. Okay. Learn to communicate with the people around you. Treat them the way you desire to be treated. And absolutely, and again, the reality of it is this. When we work together, and I mean all species, including plants and animals, okay, plants, animals, corporeals, non-corporeals, the whole 9 yards, working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. But it's going to take effort. It's going to take accepting responsibility for your own action and or inactions. Okay, this is just the way that the world's evolved. Okay, now I've shown you a few books here, and again, if you're looking to get a hold of any of the books that I've got, I am putting them again together for various races, various technologies, species, you name it, I'm working on it. Okay, there's a lot being done at this point. But the important factor from your guys' end, every species I've run across, no matter what it is, goes through similar things. Now, granted, grass does not have a whole lot of technology involved, but they do have communication. Okay, insects have phenomenally intricate communication. And it really does boil down to the more you understand about things, the better, the more equipped you are to adapt to them. Now remember, if you're going to a new area that does not speak English, for instance, learn at least the basics of the language you're heading for. Okay, learn the culture. You're going there, it's time to adapt. Okay, it's time to open your heart, open your mouth, and remember to communicate. Okay, because all species are identical in that respect. They all go through the same thing. You're just going through it now. Now, I've just been informed we're down to 5 minutes. That said, any of the books I've talked about or showing you or consulting, if you just want to give me a hand with simple support, all of it can be reached at the link at the top of the chat room at buymeacoffee.com/innervoicej. Every one of the books, the consulting, all of it is there. At the bottom of every video that we put out, I've got a list of different ways to get a hold of me. And you're more than welcome, Renee. I'm glad you joined us. Watch for the near future, because tomorrow we've got some races we are going to be dealing with. Specifically, the Reticulans, the Aniod, the Gadefni, and the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki is interesting because I just found out something new recent about them. That said, guys, I am going to be back again tomorrow. Until then, okay, I'll be back tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Until then, do take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes,